Hi, I'm Liska Turner from Beaumont People, and welcome to this month's edition of the CEO Leadership Series. Today, I'm really lucky to be joined by Dave Fisher, the CEO of Housing Plus. Housing Plus is a Tier 1 community housing provider based in Orange, servicing West and Western New South Wales. They also provide an additional range of diverse community service programs, with their core business being in domestic and family violence. And additionally, they also are quite innovative and have a range of innovative services around determining and measuring social value outcomes, and a scholarship program as well. Click on the link below to have a look at their website. Dave, thanks so much for joining us today. I appreciate it's been a busy day and that you found some space for me. So I'm just going to kick off right from the beginning and say, CEOs lead from the front. What are the most important decisions that you make as a leader of your organisation?
Well, hi, Liska. Lovely to be speaking to you.
Thank you.
If not in person, it's lovely to see you as well. I think the most important decisions are the ones that realise your board's vision for the organisation. So that's about, and I think that's about shaping the future for customers and the organisation as a whole. So the decisions that I take around how I inspire people, how I set direction, how I maintain focus across the organisation, especially an organisation that's providing a whole range of different services around a whole range of different locations. It's really important to maintain focus, and how I make decisions that reinforce our culture. And I think those decisions are around how we allocate resources, how we invest in our people, how we invest in new ways of working. And it's also about ensuring our strategies and plans are aligned and focused on the overall goals of the organisation.
I'm going to ask you, actually leads on to my second question, but I think that when you talk about maintaining focus, I think with the second outbreak of COVID, happening in Victoria and southwestern Sydney, and everyone's just a little bit mindful that actually, this might not go away as fast as we thought. Have you had to do and engage with your staff differently to help maintain that people focus of what you're doing?
Absolutely. Look, I think Housing Plus is a fairly flexible organisation. I think we like to think we've got a learning culture, so we like to adapt. So I think we're able to manage change well. But for COVID-19 and the onset of the pandemic, and as you say, the potential of a second wave coming through, we took a very prudent approach right from the outset, which was to protect our customers and protect our employees. And we adopted remote working almost immediately. Decisively, we were very clear that we were going to do it, and for a period of time. I think our IT systems allowed us to do that with relative ease. And I think, looking back at the time, I think the biggest challenge was really around understanding the impact of doing that for our customers, many of which have complex and challenging needs. And the approach that we took was for each service, each team, to be flexible in how they manage their services, and while maintaining the right social distancing.
Because I suppose at the end of the day, the way your customers engage with your staff has as significant an impact on their well-being as the way you engage with them, doesn't it?
Absolutely. And some of our services, as I say, we provide domestic family violence services. We work with corrections and assisting people coming out of corrections. A lot of it is face-to-face, and at the time of the outset of the pandemic, we weren't sure how best to deliver that safely for them as well as our employees. I think working remotely has allowed us to maintain our services. We've actually found that we've introduced a number of new ways for clients and customers, so it's allowed us to be more innovative. So we now provide video links and web chats and so on, which many of our customers actually enjoy and prefer. So it's been quite a revelation.
Oh, that's good. Coming to you though, what about your leadership style? Have you had to adjust? Have you had to adjust it?
Yeah, I mean, I think communication is important all of the time, but I think it's particularly important at periods of change, especially rapid change, which was happening at the outset of the pandemic. So I try to be very visible. I've had to do that differently, and obviously taking advantage of the technology through remote working and team meetings and Zoom meetings. We introduced more formal reporting structures, so weekly CEO video links, Q&A sessions. I think that was important to maintain the communication, if not increase it, and just taking advantage of the technology to allow that to happen.
Have you done anything differently? These aren't in the pre-prepared questions, so thank you for going with me here. But one of the things, I hosted a CEO roundtable 2 last week, and one of the things we talked about is how do you, as a leader, not only get the lens of your direct reporting team, because they will tell you, because they report to you, how do you actually find out what's going on around the water cooler? Has that been a challenge for you? Have you?
I think you're right, and I think that happens anyway. And I think some of the structures that you've got to put in at the organisation to make sure you've got a good sense of what, as you say, what is the talk across the organisation. So I have weekly CEO video links, and it's a Q&A. It's a live Q&A session. Nothing's prepared.
Okay.
We do regular questionnaires through our HR team on on a range of questions about how it's been working remotely. We're looking at health and well-being as much as the actual day job, and making sure people have got the right tools and so on. And I do spend time in different locations.
Okay.
I think one of the other things which I think has been different about COVID and the approach that I've taken is because the teams are meeting on Teams. We use Microsoft Teams. Because they are scheduled, it allows actually the chief exec with an invitation from the team to sit in on those meetings. And I've certainly did that in the early month of the pandemic. So I actually was quite visible in their own team meetings. Physically, I could never do that because we work over such a large patch, central and far west and New South Wales.
It's amazing how no commute or travel time has made differences that we never really thought about. You mentioned right at the beginning that you've done some new things. Have been there, apart from using technology different or offering people different ways to access your services, have there been any other silver linings for Housing Plus?
I think first of all, I think when you step back, and these kind of meetings gives you an opportunity just to reflect. I think we've tested our business continuity planning. And that's really important. I think sometimes these things can, gather dust on shelves. And I think we've proven to ourselves that, one, we can do it, and two, that business continuity planning is important. I think we've demonstrated to ourselves and demonstrated successfully that we can work remotely. And from the questionnaires that we've undertaken, our employees, my colleagues, like that flexibility. So in terms of other silver linings, we've introduced some new services. We've introduced a good neighbour service for our most vulnerable tenants, and that the feedback on that has been very, very positive. So I think there's been some silver linings.
That sense of community, it's shown up in different ways, hasn't it? And that's a perfect example. You also said that, one of the things that you do that's really important as a leader is set culture. So how do you influence culture, and how may you do it differently going forward in our new, well, it's not so new anymore, it's been 4 or 5 months, sort of it's a bit of a jigsaw workplace now. It's not just offices where you can, in a way, control the environment. Here, there's lots of different mechanisms.
I think that's a great phrase, that kind of jigsaw workplace. And we're just working through a process at the moment to understand from a team level how best we can move back to some form of office-based working. Look, I think we place a lot of importance on behaviour and our culture. I think our culture is one of the main things that attract people to Housing Plus. We invest in training. That's not going to change. The nature of that training and the delivery of that training may be different, but our investment in our people will continue. I think CEOs, executives, middle managers, we've all got to continue to live the values and act as role models, regardless of whether or not that's in an office-based environment or working remotely. I think one of the things that increasingly I'm noticing, although my colleagues have enjoyed working and the flexibility that working remotely has given to them, I think I'm starting to notice the lack of socialization becoming an issue. And in the past, we would have regular employee events, every quarter. We always enjoyed celebrating our successes and promoting individual teams. I think we've done that quite well over Zoom and team meetings, but I think we need to start seeing each other in a room and socialize. I think we've got to come back to some form of office-based working where we can actually meet safely.
And it's the new people that you onboard into your business. That's something certainly that I've noticed over the past few months. People don't stop recruiting because you still need leaders in your business. It's just how you onboard them into your business. Now, Dave, you also hold a couple of directorships with NCOS and Homelessness New South Wales. So you look at boards and governance from two lenses. So as the CEO, you report to the board of Housing Plus, and then you also sit on a couple of state boards as well. So what role does the board have in determining culture?
Okay, I mean, yes, I do sit on a couple of boards, and I'm very proud to do so. They're both member organisations, so I think it's important to say that those boards play an important role in representing their membership, as well as setting the values for the organisation and strategic direction. I think directors are also very important role models for the organisation, both in terms of risk appetite, compliance, understanding and engaging with stakeholders, as well as setting the ambition and values for the organisation. I think directors have a really important role to play in all of those, in addition to their fiduciary duty, of course.
I like that about, a risk appetite, because I think it's a fine line. One of the things that's definitely come to the fore is the organisations that have flourished in my conversations are the ones that have, kept going with their strategic plan. There's only one or two that actually stopped and they put it on hold and they went to like for 1 year, whereas everyone else has gone, no, we've had to be nimble, we've had to flex, but we haven't stopped our strategic planning process, and we've had to, our board's risk appetite has actually had to increase from a business continuity point of view. So Dave, you've worked in community housing for a number of years in the UK, and then this is your first role here in Australia. What are the commonalities and what are the differences? What observations have you drawn?
Oh, that's a big question.
Okay, how about you just pick one of each?
Okay, in summary, look, I think
I know it's a big question.
And it's a great question. Both countries are facing a real decline in owner occupation, and I think that's not necessarily recognised, but it's happening. Both are facing an acute shortage of affordable housing, and unfortunately, both are facing increases in homelessness and domestic family violence. I think those are the commonalities. The differences are reflective of, the differences are many, really. If they lie in policy, they lie in legislative changes, but probably more importantly, the cultural needs of Australians versus UK citizens. Our customers here at Housing Plus have different needs to the customers that I was serving back in the UK, and certainly different cultural needs. And that certainly has to be recognised in how we provide services. The policy responses are different in the UK.
You're being very diplomatic here. Is there anything that took you, when I say took you by surprise, I don't mean that in a bad way, that you kind of went, oh, I hadn't thought about that, or I wasn't expecting that?
Yeah, I mean, look, well, maybe one from both sides. From the UK, I think there's a greater focus in the UK on community housing providers building for sale, outright sale or shared ownership. And that surplus being used to subsidise the social rented accommodation. As I said, the UK faces a similar shortage of affordable housing, and their approach is to place the community housing provider in a role to provide a range of housing and take the risk associated with that. And I think that's different from Australia. It does place that commercial approach really does reduce cost to government in providing social housing, but it does present a much bigger risk to the sector.
It does. It's significantly bigger risk. And I have heard whisperings of that, I have to say, in Australia. And so I thought, oh, that'll be interesting to watch. Anyway, I interrupted you.
And then from an Australian perspective, look, I think the difference is that the connection between government departments and communities, I think, is much closer than in the UK. That doesn't mean to say we're happy with every government policy and we wouldn't want more support, but I do think that there's a connection there between government departments, peak bodies, and different sectors and the communities they represent.
That's a really good thing to hear, because so often, the reflection is UK is, if we want to know our future, we just look to the UK, because typically they are a number of years ahead of us from a policy point of view. So it's interesting to hear you talk about there's an upside.
Well, there's a great example of that in the planning that takes place between Commonwealth government and state government around tackling domestic family violence. No one would say that we've solved domestic family violence in Australia. Absolutely not. But there's definitely a political commitment between the different states and the Commonwealth to work towards that. And I think the work that's been done over the last 10 plus years actually allows domestic family violence to be a subject that can be talked about in a way that couldn't be 10, 15 years ago. So it's
all over the
big steps. We want them to be bigger steps, but there's definitely steps nevertheless.
And unfortunately, it's all over the press at the moment. So coming back to you, what's your best habit as a leader?
Okay, I would think my best habit would be to always act with integrity, always take responsibility for my decisions. And so I would say my best habit is probably trust.
Okay. What do you mean by that? Trusting your people or getting people to trust you?
They can trust me, and I think that's about how you behave and how you act and how you make decisions and how you take responsibility for decisions.
Thank you. Okay. So a man is not an island, neither is a woman. So where do you draw your support and inspiration from as a leader?
Oh, that's so true. There's been a lot of key people and organisations over the years throughout my career that I've been fortunate enough to kind of work with and draw inspiration from. But I'll tell you, I've always been driven by social justice and improving the quality of lives of our tenants and clients. That's what took me away from civil engineering into public housing too long ago to remember. And but it's still a driving force for me, and I think it's still the thing that gets me enthused and inspired. So yeah, that's me.
And what leadership decision are you most proud of?
Right. I just look. I think I said at the beginning. I think you've got to take responsibility for shaping the future for your customers and the organisation that you're representing. So the decisions that I would be most proud of are those that have had the greatest impact on improving the quality of lives. Look, be that decisions around growing organisations. We're building at the moment one of the biggest social and affordable housing programs in regional New South Wales, but it can also be decisions around improving services that have quite a profound effect on families and the quality of their lives. I also, I don't know. I mean, I think decisions around how you change culture, the impact that can have on empowering teams, middle managers, as well as executive teams is really something I enjoy.
What do you think's the bravest decision you've made?
Well, that's a difficult question. I'm never sure I make brave decisions. I'm probably too cautious and prudent to make a kind of brave decision. I'll take risks if the benefits are there. I don't know, Liska, that's a really good question. I don't know if I've got an immediate answer for you. Give me a second to think. No, I'm not sure I would say there've ever been brave decisions. No, I don't think maybe need to pause on that one.
I think you're being very modest, but anyway, we shall reflect on that one. Because I think, and the reason I brought that up is that, look, we're leading in uncharted times, and the decision-making processes, I looked around my Zoom table the other day, and there were some very, very tired CEOs that were looking back at me.
Yeah.
And there was just this, we're doing two jobs at the moment. We are leading our people and our businesses and trying to do business as usual. And on the other hand, we're engaging with our stakeholders and trying to look over the horizon so that we're positioning our business for where it's going to be in 12 months' time. And because you're not in a room full of people at a conference where you just go in and can talk to 20 people at once, you've got to consciously think about who those 20 people are and how you're going to engage with them and how are you going to do it, and are you going to take a higher risk appetite to be nimble because there might be something that comes down the line. And I suppose I just meant it more in that context rather than putting you on the spot. So David, it's been fabulous. I know you've had a busy day, so thank you so much for giving me half an hour of your time. It's been great, and I look forward to continuing to see some of the innovative stuff that you are working on, particularly around that social value measure,ment and outcomes measurement. I think it's really
Not at all, Liska. We should do it again.
I know. Next time I might actually come to Orange and do this in person.
We've got some very nice wine in Orange.
Excellent. All right. Thanks very much for your time.
Enjoy the rest of your day. Take care.
I will. Cheers. Bye.